The year is 1951. Germany is divided and forms the front line of the Cold War, turning it into a sort of nuclear buffer zone that could turn hot any second. American occupation of Bavaria makes GIs, and by extension Americans and ultimately Hollywood, believe Germany is Bavaria, and even worse, that Bavaria is Germany. The threat of intercontinental nuclear missiles is omnipresent and puts a dent in the story of American exceptionalism and consumerism's promise of a worry-free life. These commies might just be crazy enough to drop nukes on cities, can you imagine? So how do you paint over the very real threat of nuclear annihilation with a fabricated feeling of safety? And more importantly, how do you teach this topic to school children without traumatizing them with a universal fear of spontaneous incineration? Enter Bert the Turtle. This 9-minute short, a mix of cartoon and live action, was commissioned by the US Federal Civil Defense Administration and distributed to schools across the nation to teach students to, as its name and catchy jingle suggest, duck and cover when you see the flash.
He knew just what to do. Duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. The bomb might explode when there are no grown-ups near. Paul and Patty know this, but no matter where they go or what they do, they always try to remember what to do if the atom bomb explodes right then. It's a bomb. Duck and cover. Paul and Patty know what to do. Paul covered the back of his head so that he wouldn't be burned, and Patty covered herself with the coat she was carrying. It is such a big explosion, it can smash in buildings and knock signboards over and break windows all over town. But if you duck and cover like Bert, you will be much safer. Tony knows the bomb can explode any time of the year, day or night. He is ready for it. Duck and cover. Atta boy, Tony, that flash means act fast.
Now, if all this sounds a bit questionable to you, you're not alone. Laura McEnany, professor of history at Whittier College, claims that Americans of the 1950s failed to find a solution to the problem of atomic attack, relying instead on such puerile practices as the teaching of duck and cover techniques. The entire film is an absolute goldmine of jingoistic overconfidence.
You know how bad sunburn can feel. The atomic bomb flash could burn you worse than a terrible sunburn. This family knows what to do. They know that even a thin cloth helps protect them. Even a newspaper can save you from a bad burn.
Now, the idea that puny Soviet nukes will be stopped by the latest issue of the New York Post is objectively funny. Not only that, it lends itself incredibly well as inspiration for satire of propaganda trivializing the horrors of nuclear war. So it comes as no surprise when in 1997 a satirical video game about a post-nuclear American wasteland introduces a familiar character that quickly becomes the mascot of the entire franchise: Fallout's Vault Boy. Now, in contrast to Bert, Vault Boy is not government-issued. It's the mascot of the fictional company Vault-Tec that somehow established a worrying quasi-monopoly on Fallout shelters. While Vault Boy has been the face of the franchise throughout, Fallout's particular obsession with mimicking 1950s state-sponsored instructional films like Duck and Cover peaked with the promotional campaign of Fallout 4.
The chance of your being hurt by an atomic bomb is slight. But since there is a chance, you must know how to protect yourself.
Following total atomic annihilation, the rebuilding of this great nation of ours may fall to you. That's why we at Vault-Tec have prepared these educational materials.
In these 2-minute clips, Vault Boy, like Bert, is eternally chipper, whistling tunes before being blown to bits, all in the name of educating the childlike vault dwellers, like Bert did American school kids, about the nuclear dangers that await. And just like his real-life reference, Vault Boy is accompanied by a comforting male narrator, expertly downplaying the horrific violence on display.
Endurance can also provide new options for food, some of which can be an acquired taste.
Which, and this is crucial, must always end on a high note. He may get peppered with bullets, irradiated, lose a limb or grow a new one. Every clip still ends with his signature smile plastered across the screen. And it is, of course, that tonal clash between grim reality and the unrelenting optimism of propaganda that defines the franchise.
For as long as history has been recorded, man has had an insatiable hunger for knowledge.
But the games go a step further. Fallout explicitly frames this grim reality as a direct result of said propaganda. If you look at the actual American Cold War aesthetic, the future that its media landscape sold its viewers, smart wristwatches, robot butlers, robot workers, robot surgery. Okay, maybe not entirely bloodless.
You have marvelous bone structure.
It's all here, but as little more than specters of a sort of naive futurism that in our world did not come to pass and which now haunt the player in the present. Ghoul-infested shopping malls, murderous robot nannies, trigger-happy police droids, and the rusty remains of clean energy cars. Not quite solar-powered, not quite electric, but with comically volatile nuclear battery still intact. These promises of convenience are not just ironic in that they contrast with the brutal dystopia around them, they are the dystopia. Many of these remnants of consumerism are no longer a safe place to retreat to, they're a threat to human life itself. This concept of past visions of dead futures haunting the present firmly places Fallout's dystopia in the twisted world of Jacques Derrida's hauntology. In the video game space, you may also recognize the concept from the BioShock franchise, where remnants of a failed ANCAP utopia, or simply ANCAP Utopia for short, haunt the player in the present. Now, planting these vivid, ubiquitous images of the future in the heads of the general public to start with would have been impossible if the onset of the Cold War hadn't coincided with the advent of television, enabling synchronized messaging to millions of people. In concert with the golden age of comic books, the 50s saw the rising dominance of visual media to not only shape public opinion, but, quote, acclimate viewers to new forms of everyday modernism in post-war visual culture. Essentially, government and corporations could create a separate reality, an image of a world to aspire and, in the case of commercials, literally buy into.
Eggnog. How the whole family loves it. If you wish, top it with
a scoop of protein.
Bring home the Coke, bring home the Coke. Everybody's happy when you bring home the Coke.
This alternate media reality inevitably, or intentionally, instilled a range of ideologies in the American citizenry, such as, quote, corporate liberalism, consumerism, and nationalism. This includes seemingly innocuous films like Duck and Cover. Most historians, like the aforementioned McInerney, claim that the actual primary purpose of civil defense, rather than to protect civilians against the consequences of war, was to stir up support for it. But any utopia also needs a narrative of a hostile force tirelessly working to undermine any semblance of progress in order to blame internal failures on external forces. In the case of Cold War America, this was, of course, communism. The flip side of making Americans feel proud of a lie, American exceptionalism, was making them afraid of fabrications about the other, the Red Scare. And this is where Fallout's political satire truly takes shape. The archive of quotes from American super robot Liberty Prime is a treasure trove of shamelessly over-the-top, on-the-nose parody of a worldview unburdened by theory and entirely built on buzzwords.
Death is a preferable alternative to communism. Democracy is freedom. Communism is tyranny. Democracy is non-negotiable. Embrace democracy, or you will be eradicated. I am Liberty Prime. I am America.
Same goes for Mr. Gutsy, a drill instructor-style military drone poised to scrutinize the political loyalty of whoever they happen to cross paths with.
Curfew?
By order of Provisional Governor Grant, A state of martial law has been declared.
And staying true to the McCarthyism it's satirizing, Mr. Gutsy never fails to accuse whoever he speaks to of being a
Coming bastard!
or, in reference to Nixon, a
Pansy-ass pinko!
ready to deliver justice on the spot.
You're gonna learn how Uncle Sam deals with commie madness!
This mania around communist infiltration through spies and traitors, Fallout 4 also recreates through the Institute, whose lifelike synths they use to replace citizens of the Commonwealth and undermine its society. It could be anyone, from your neighbor all the way up to the mayor.
I am not a synth.
This not only results in, but justifies the ensuing witch hunt where everyone accuses whoever they don't like of being a synth.
He's a synth! He'll kill us all! Kyle, no! He's the synth, and he wants to replace me. Please, please, you gotta believe me. You can't...
A Harvard opinion poll conducted in 1950 found that 73% of Americans were willing to report potentially communist friends and neighbors to the FBI. And why wouldn't you, if your own damn settlers turn out to be spies? The satire is so effective, just look how it's driving these players insane with conspiracies and general suspicion of everything and everyone that sets foot in their settlement. I've heard that synths can infiltrate your settlements? Yeah, if the Institute attacks one of your settlements, they may become turncoats and side with the attackers. It drops happiness if you care about that. They can sabotage your power grid and destroy your generators.
They do not destroy any settlement objects. They do not sabotage anything. They are not part of the Institute. They do not have Institute faction flags.
I kept finding incidents about them being bad for settlements. No real proof, by the way, just rumors. And here we arrive at the first principle of Fallout's aesthetic. It's not that of the actual Cold War era, but as it was portrayed in propaganda and commercials.
Sugar bombs. 100% daily value of sugar.
Folks, don't wait. Get Kellogg's new Sugar Smacks. Puffs of wheat, sugar toasted, and candy sweet.
Even in its alternate history setting, Fallout could have simply gone with a realistic render of a Cold War post-apocalypse, but the world of Fallout is not based on reality. It is based on past visions of the future. As a player, we immerse ourselves in the simulation of a world dreamt up by the futurist propaganda, commercials, and art of the past, with all of their inherent contradictions.
The apocalypse? Well, hell, sign me up.
The result is an interactive caricature of Cold War narratives. Consumerism that devours its own consumers. Patriotism for a country that betrayed its own citizens. Jingoism for a war that ended the world. Authoritarian lip service to democratic values. And this is a spoiler for the finale of Season 1 of Fallout, comically aggressive anti-communism in a world where capital triggered nuclear Armageddon. In Fallout, the gadgets of the fantastical futurism of the past have actually manifested, but the utopian world they were supposed to inhabit is dead. What remains is the creeping realization that the ideologies behind American 50s media, corporate liberalism, consumerism, and nationalism, and its dreams of picket fence Americana neighborhoods with heteronormative families just as nuclear as their car and robot butler, have always been inseparable from their own self-destruction. And nothing epitomizes this better than Fallout's very own exploding turtle, Vault Boy, a perpetually cheerful mascot who, like Bird, represents a staunchly patriotic institution, which in reality thinks of its own people as little more than a disposable resource.
Concerns about security? Our Eye on You cameras enable the Vault's leader to watch your every move. You'll never be alone again.
The twist is that his laughably optimistic safety drills, unlike Bird's, actually work because they apply to a fictional world that is equally as bizarre and naive as the one presented in Duck and Cover.
It's worthless to me anyway.
It's a mascot in a world following mascot rules.
You will find that even wild animals can be charmed by your charisma.
Vault Boy exists to ask the question, what if the propaganda was right and you actually could duck and cover from a nuke? And the answer the satire gives is that still wouldn't change the fact that the commissioners of the original mascot were politically targeting their own people, the very same people their mascot pretended to protect. Even if Bert's advice worked, the very state that commissioned him still rounded up its own citizens for being un-American, and experimented on them, and poisoned them. Fallout then simply satirizes this awkward dynamic by dialing it up, both the convenience for the individual and the dismantling of society. Here, the fact that nuclear fusion actually exists and powers exoskeletons, cars, robots, things that actually delivered on the promises of consumerism, does not make the corporations that built them any less complicit in bringing about the end of the world, and experimenting on citizens and poisoning them. And this uneasy relationship between the inhabitants of the wasteland on the one hand and their hauntology gadgets on the other, between an innocent vault dweller and her Vault-Tec Pip-Boy, invaluable and yet designed by a company built on experimenting on its own clients, like her, is the exact tension that sits at the heart of Fallout as a caricature of Cold War media. Which I think is at least one reason why the franchise resonates so well with audiences of today. In the same deeply conflicted way that Vault Dweller looks at her Pip-Boy, I look at Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Thanks for watching. Now, before the actuallys roast my unshielded skin in the comments, yes, studies have shown that if you're sufficiently far away, paper-thin covering is actually not as useless against thermal radiation burns as common sense would suggest. To which I would retort, ja, egal, the joke is fat. Now, to clarify, this is not what I've been working on all year, and the year before. This one is actually based on a German article from Marie, commissioned by the Allied Museum in Berlin for their exhibition on Cold War games. Link in the description. My main project is slowly turning into a vision from the past haunting and taunting me in the present. I wish I could guarantee that I will release it in 2026. And that's all I'll say on that. Stay safe out there.